Thanks, Dr. Duckworth. My dad was very astute and kept very good records. He always kept a complete journal of every trip we ever went on. And in going through a lot of his stuff, I have found all of these journals. So if you want to look at them, list the trips starting in 71, 73, 93, 94. And in addition, since you all knew him, I've decided I'm going to read you the entire 250. But you can take a look at that. Another thing he did was he had written a small 40-so page autobiographical sketch of his life. And all you guys who are getting up there know how much your kids will enjoy being able to read about his life. It's some little details that he mentions in there, which are just quite unique. It's really a reflection on how unique he is as a person that he would think to do that. But, like I said earlier, thank you so much for coming. Some of you traveled many miles, and my dad would have been moved, but he also would have been comfortable because he was happiest when he was surrounded by his family, his friends, and his church, which he valued so much. We're here this afternoon to celebrate the life of my father and my best friend. He was one of the most significant role models in my life, who recently, in April, went home to be with the Lord. What a testimony to God's grace as his life impacted each of us in this room. When you think about your life and how it connects with people, it's really remarkable about how it all works, and it can be so significant. Let me start off with a verse that summarizes his journey while here on earth. 2 Timothy 4, 6 through 8. For I am already being poured out as a drink offering, and the time of my departure has come. I've fought the good fight. I've finished the race. I've kept the faith. Henceforth there is laid up for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award me on that day, and not only to me, but also to all those who have loved his appearing. This verse is about Paul being faithful to the task at hand. When I think of my dad, that's what I think of, a man who indeed was faithful to the task at hand. While we all in this room experience the feeling of loss of this beloved one, we also remember that his faith and the promises afforded the Christian life are the promises of the benefits of God, of hope and joy eternal for his promised life after this life when he went home. My dad, now this came out of some of this came out of his biography. My dad was born July 14th, 1931, at the height of the Great Depression. This was a time of extreme uncertainty. Unemployment soared over 20% that year, and it was not an easy time to have a new baby. During the 30s, the family had moved around to get work, and in 1939, they joined the Trinity Methodist Church and were faithful members of the Methodist Church ever since. In that autobiography, he spoke fondly of the things of his childhood, like his gifts he received as a young boy, of a little puppy that he got, a new Elgin bike with silver fenders and an electric horn light. The bike was used for a paper route. He got up in the wee hours of the morning to throw paper. He told us about going to the movie theater, which was a nickel on Saturday. His first job, 25 cents an hour. He played sports with the local high school, was active in student government, but the most significant thing he did in high school was he met my mom in his junior year in Miss Gladding's English class. They dated, began going steady, and would later marry, and she would become his partner for 64 years. He had received a scholarship to Rice, but he soon missed Mom and returned to Memphis State, majoring in business, so he could marry her which he did in 1951. At the time, the average cost for a new home was $9,000, and the average family income averaged $3,500. John bought his first car that year, of which he was very proud. $395 for a 1939 Ford, which has a 60 horsepower engine. My BMW motorcycle has a 110 horsepower engine. In the verse I mentioned earlier, Paul prioritized the pouring out of a sacrificial life. So what does a sacrificial life look like? In my dad's case, it meant sacrificially dedicating his life to his family, his friends, his work, his church, and most importantly, his God. Dad taught me how to have a great attitude about life. How? First, by whistling. He whistled all the time. It's probably one of the things I remember the most about it. In the shower each morning, while he worked in the yard, it was like he was proclaiming how much he loved life. Some of the things my dad enjoyed doing was researching the family history. He loved playing bridge and was good at it. Even just last year, he won a bridge competition with over 200 competitors. To him, family was not only important, it was essential. It was one of the most important things you pour your life into. It was taking vacations each year to do a week backpacking trip on the Appalachian Trail when we started and completed over 800 miles. A little story about the beginning of all of the backpacking. We started right here in Memphis. We heard about this trail that went down the levee down toward Mississippi. It was the DeSoto Trail or something like that. But I remember that first year I had a 12-pound wrought iron cast iron skillet that he made me carry. We kind of perfected our ticket and learned that that was not a good thing. But what happened was we started going, so we said, well, how do you like it? But that was great. That was pretty fun. Well, let's think about doing another one. Okay. So Dad began researching and found out about the Appalachian Trail. And that first year we got in a 1965 Galaxy Ford with my other brother. Gary was too young then to go on that first trip, but he made everyone after that. We drove to the Great Smokies. He had contacted Fontana Dam and paid a guy $70 to drive us up to the trailhead and then drive the car back around. And we got up there. We went from Davenport Gap to Fontana Dam, 7 days. We backpacked every day. It rained every day, all day. I'm talking all day. We never saw a vista. Every view we went to, it was nothing but clouds. But by the end of the trip, we all said, we love this. Let's keep doing it. So we did it, as we started. But that was the first trip. And then every year, he would take a week of his vacation. We'd plan a trip. And the next year, we did 70 miles in the Pisgahs. The next year, we just kept shipping off. And the Appalachian Trail is 2,000 miles. We did, I've done about 700-800 miles, like Georgia, Tennessee, North Carolina, up into Virginia, and then we went to Maine and New Hampshire. We did 120 miles up there. But that was when John Duckworth and my dad began talking, and John was saying, all the positive things, it's dry out there. You don't have to go over the tops of the mountains, you go through the saddles. The firewood is great, and you never have to worry about, because it'd be quite a chore just to start a fire when the wood was that wet from the Appalachians, But anyway, so that was the start, and we started going out west. They were so excited about it. I know that once they retired, you almost couldn't stop them. I remember my dad used to always say to me, because he would say, and he sold this to other people as well, we're all engaged in life. We all have the pressures on our life, the disappointments with family, the struggles, just the struggles that you go through in normal day life. But you get off the beaten path, you get away from it. And it's not that you don't think about the problems and the struggles that you had, But he'd say, that thing that upset me at work, last week I got upset about this thing, and you just think about it and you go, that doesn't mean a flip. I mean, it doesn't mean anything in the bigger thing. So part of our therapy really was to get out and to get in the mountains and to be able to think about our families and think about things we were working on at work and our careers and kind of put things into perspective. So that was one of the things that he taught me. And I know that, of course, I think that Mike and I, as they had this renewed interest in all these people wanting to go, they really wanted help. Because it's difficult to manage groups of people out in the middle of nowhere. They're like, don't you think you could go on a trip with us? So we would go and we would help, but we loved it. And Mike and I had some great memories. I know Mike the most probably that I had gone with of the duck course. But gosh, I remember those coming out of Glacier. We had to fly a plane out of Glacier, and we came out on a road, and it was like after we had typed 70 miles, all of a sudden on a road. It's a paved road in the middle of nowhere, and you don't really like to walk on paved roads. And I remember no one was coming by to give us a ride or anything. John Duckworth finally said, "This is crazy." The first person that went by, she went by and we just were like this, please give us a ride. And so finally she turned around and came back, and when she came back, Dr. Duckworth pulled out 320s and held it up like this. This will get her, And so she came back, and it was a woman, Can you imagine picking up 5 guys in the middle of after being in the mountains for a week, So they threw us in the back of a pickup truck, and weather was beautiful. It was in October, the beautiful aspen trees, and my dad and I, we drove down to the first store down there, and I remember we bought a 6-pack of beer. We were sitting in the back of this pickup truck, driving through the mountains, and Dr. Duckworth was so jealous because he couldn't drink one because he had to go on the plane and fly us in a couple hours. But we have thousands of stories like that. We really do, and thousands of memories, But, the other thing is when my dad started backpacking, he prioritized spending times with his sons. Sons who during their teenage years weren't really all the time lovable. I know kids, you might find that hard to believe. But, it's recognizing that while quality time is important, quantity time is also important. And, it's giving back. He was faithful to his church and to others. I'd already mentioned that, the Gray Eagles. But, in the Gray Eagles, they never made a dime. They gave people the opportunity firsthand to see the beauty of God's creation and experience nature in a way that was quite unique. Oh, how they loved those trips. In his work, it was working through the ranks of Kraft Food, rising to the level of a director of finance, serving the same employer for 32 years. In his church, he served as chairman of the education committee, chairman of the council of ministries, and chairman of the administration board. In his autobiography, I found mentions of tough times too, like early in his marriage when mom lost a baby in her pregnancy, and when his son, my brother Jeff, at 27 years old, was killed in a traffic accident. This accident occurred only 20 days after Jeff was married, but I can still remember how the family rallied around each other and our God. We had the service here in this facility. I think it was in one of the bigger rooms, and he's buried right out there, and Dad eventually will be right near him, right next to him. But most important thing that he showed me how to love a wife. His wife was the most important relationship on earth to him, and you could see it every time he was around her. How he cherished her, this woman God had given him, and the 64 years of marriage was a testimony to God's grace. Even in these last few days, when his faculties were failing, I'd hear him honoring his wife, calling her dear, telling her, "I love you, dear." She'd always respond and say, "I love you too, dear," in return. In the end, it was not that he didn't have something to look forward to after his departure, because we know as Christians there is more. He just didn't want to leave his family in hurt. So back to the verse. Paul concludes he's fought the good fight. He finished the race. He kept the faith. John did fight the good fight, and we know about the promises of the Christian life. In the last verse, Paul talks about the promises that are laid up in heaven for us, the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, who will award him on that day, and for all who have loved his appearing. So the promises for John and the Christian life are specific. They are tangibles, they are just, and they are true. O death, where is thy sting? For the Christian there is no sting. We stand and rejoice in those promises and look forward to eternity and unity with him again on our going home. And while we'll miss John, we know we will be following to join him soon. We know that our life on earth is fleeting, and that as we saw with Jeff, that death can come in an instant. For no one knows if we even have one more day before we will stand before God. But for Dad, his life was full, it was deep, it was a life I have benefited from, a firm life of a firm foundation, a life which prioritizes his family and his God. And thanks, Dad, for the examples you were, and for so many in this room. Let us pray. Father, thank you for giving us this example that so many have benefited from. What an encouragement it has been to have had him in our lives. A life well lived, a life full of faith, family, and friends. We pray that we will keep his memory alive for us and the coming generations. That this family and these dear friends will rally around my mom, continue to support her and love her during the coming weeks and months ahead. Amen. Please join me why don't we rise and we'll say the Lord's Prayer.